You need to understand why park rangers fear the Appalachian Wood Devil. Because the ones who've seen it don't talk about it, and the reason they don't is not what you'd expect. Eldon Cruse had 27 years as a district ranger in the White Mountain backcountry of New Hampshire. He knew every coast county account of the Wood Devil, the tall, narrow, gray thing that disappears the moment you look at it directly. He didn't put much weight in them. In September of 2015, he stopped his truck on a remote spur road he'd driven 100 times. Clear night, live radio, no reason to stop. He stopped anyway, because something had dropped a spruce tree across the only road out. No windstorm, no root failure. And while he sat there deciding whether to call it in, his driver's side window fogged from the outside. Not condensation. Something exhaled against the glass. A patrol unit found him 2 hours and 40 minutes later. He was fine. The tree was real. The tracks that should have been in the soft September soil were not there. What you are about to hear is the account. His name is Eldon Cruse, and this happened on a road he knew by heart. It was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that doesn't announce itself. No weather, no news, no reason to pull it out of memory later. Eldon had been up on the Kilkenny Spur since late afternoon, checking a reported washout near the upper junction. It turned out to be a shallow rut and nothing more. He photographed it, logged it, and pointed the F250 back down at 8:47 p.m. The truck had 214,883 miles on it. The speedometer needle drifted 2 clicks left at rest, so he always added 2 when he checked his speed. He'd been doing that so long it wasn't a thought anymore, just a correction his eyes made automatically. The thermos in the cup holder had a crack in the lid sealed with electrical tape he hadn't replaced in 4 years. That kind of man. He was cutting back early because Vera had called at 6:15. His younger daughter, Kate, had been in an accident outside Lancaster. Stable, fractured wrist, possible concussion, but Vera was alone in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights, and Kate was asking for him, and Eldon was 40 minutes out if the road stayed clear. He had been doing that math since the moment he turned the truck around. The Kilkenny Spur is 11 miles of gravel and hardpan, cutting up through the spruce fir belt before it dead ends at a disused fire road junction. No trailheads, no camping. No reason for anyone to be up here at night except Eldon, and most nights that fact sat fine with him. Tonight it didn't. The September canopy should have been vocal. Nighthawks finishing out their season, red squirrels denning up, the low general noise of a mountain forest settling into dark. Without thinking about it, Eldon reached over and turned the radio down. The silence had a texture he couldn't name. Not peaceful. Patient. He would think later about the rut at the upper junction. Edges sharp, no grass regrowth, last rainfall in Coast County 11 days back. Something had opened that ground recently. He'd logged it as erosion on the way up without giving it much thought. He would not log it that way again. The thermal differential between the ridge and the valley floor produced a reliable nightly draft up here. He'd felt it every time he drove this road after dark for 27 years. Tonight, the canopy above him was completely still. He was 3.4 miles from the spur mouth, 8 minutes from pavement. His foot found the brake before his brain finished the sentence. The tree was down across the full width of the road, trunk the diameter of his hood, maybe 30 inches through. A mature spruce, 60 feet if it was standing. His headlights caught it clean at 40 yards, and his brain ran the checklist before he'd even set the parking brake. Root ball at the road edge. Crown debris within 10 feet of the trunk, some sign of what brought it down. In 27 years, he had investigated 3 blowdowns on this road. Everyone had those things. He put the truck in park and left it running, picked up the radio handset. No root ball, no crown debris, just the trunk, centered on the road like it had been set there. No wind tonight. He'd checked the weather at 5 before heading up. No ice load this early in September. No drought stress on a healthy spruce in a wet year. His brain started a sentence about what could drop a mature tree clean across a road with no crown debris and no root failure, and then his brain stopped without finishing it. He keyed the mic, called it in, set the handset in his lap and sat looking at the tree. The spare jacket on the back seat had shifted when he'd braked hard. He didn't look at it. He was focused on the tree. That was when the driver's side window fogged. Not from inside. Eldon ran the truck cold, windows cracked even in October, and his breath didn't fog glass until the temperature dropped another 15 degrees from where it was now. This came from outside, a slow, even bloom across the glass at head height, like something had pressed close and exhaled one long breath directly against it. His hand tightened on the handset. He did not key the mic. He was listening. The fog didn't clear the way condensation would. It held. And at the center of the fogged glass, slightly off-center toward the top, there was a pressure mark, not a handprint, not an animal nose smear. A flat, elongated oval, like the side of a narrow face, had rested against the outside of the window, and then withdrawn. The smell came with it. Wet fur, cold and long damp, the smell of something that had been wet in a dark place for a very long time. It displaced the coffee and diesel from the cab air completely. Not deer. Eldon knew deer in every season, had field-dressed enough of them that the smell was as familiar as motor oil. Not bear. Something he had no category for, and he had been doing this work for 27 years. His father ran a trap line in Coast County for 30 years before his knees gave out. He had one rule he drilled into Eldon from the time Eldon was old enough to follow him. An animal that lets you see it has already decided something about you. Eldon hadn't thought about that in years. It surfaced now, specific and uninvited, while his eyes moved to the tree line on both shoulders and found nothing there. The spruce trunks stood at their regular intervals in the peripheral light. Their shadows pointed slightly wrong for where the headlights were aimed. Not dramatically, not enough to name it. Just enough that his eyes kept returning to them without being able to say why. The smell was inside the cab now. The window was closed. It had come through before he noticed it was coming. He reached for the ignition. 11 miles of reverse in the dark was bad, but it was the only option. Backing out meant Vera wasn't alone in that chair much longer. It meant math he could still solve. His headlights flickered. Not the engine. The idle held steady. The dash instrument stayed live. The radio kept its green signal light. Just the bulbs themselves, dimming for half a second and snapping back. As if something had passed between the beams and the road at a distance, the geometry of headlights made almost impossible. Whatever interrupted the light was not at the tree. It was further back, and it was not low to the ground. Eldon locked the doors, 4 locks, in sequence, the way you do something when it is deliberate and not panicked. His left hand was shaking when he reached the last one. He was aware that it was shaking, and he was aware that he had driven this road 100 times, and his hand had never shaken on it before. He filed that fact the same way he filed everything, cleanly, without drama, and keyed the mic. Static. He keyed it again. Static. The signal light was green. The unit was live. Static, anyway. The road between his bumper and the fallen spruce was empty. 40 yards of illuminated gravel, nothing on it. He kept his eyes there and tried the radio 2 more times, checked his phone. No signal. Normal on the spur. Always normal. and put the phone face down on the passenger seat. Something was moving in the right tree line. Not toward him. Lateral. Parallel to the truck, at a pace that matched his idle almost exactly, as if it was timing itself against the engine's rhythm. He caught it in his peripheral vision first. A displacement in the dark between trunks. Something tall enough that he lost it against the upper canopy before he could fix his eyes on it. He turned his head. It wasn't there. Not retreated. Just not where he'd been looking. The spruce trunks on the right shoulder stood the same as always, and one of them was maybe a foot wider than a mature spruce should be, and it had probably been that way for longer than he'd been watching. His eyes had just not landed on it until now. That was the explanation, and he held it for about 4 seconds before he stopped holding it. His father's voice, the same way it had come at the window. An animal that lets you see it has already decided something about you. The lateral movement hadn't been accidental. Whatever was pacing his truck hadn't been spooked into visibility. It had allowed itself to be seen for exactly as long as it chose to be, and then it stopped. The cab temperature had dropped. The heater was running. He could hear the fan cycling. But the air coming through the vents was colder than when he parked. Not gradually, just colder, as if the temperature outside had fallen 10 degrees while he sat still, and the heater was losing the argument. He rolled the window down 2 inches. That was a mistake. The smell outside was worse, much worse. The same wet, cold, damp fur, but stronger, closer. The way a smell concentrates when its source is no longer at any real distance. He rolled the window back up and put both hands on the wheel and kept them there. The wide spruce on the right shoulder, the one a foot wider than it should have been, was gone. Not fallen, not moved. The gap where it stood was just a gap between 2 other trunks, spaced the way they should have been spaced all along. The way he would have sworn they were spaced when he first looked. Every Old Coast County account of the Wood Devil agrees on one behavior. It uses the moment you look away. It doesn't move in the light, doesn't move when eyes are fixed on it. The logging camp reports before living memory, the Lavoie account from 1948, the Goulet account from 1952. Every one of them says the same thing. It only moves when you're not watching. Eldon kept his eyes on the road ahead, the empty 40 yards between his bumper and the fallen spruce. He did not look at the tree line. He did not look at the back seat. He did not look at the jacket. The radio static had a pattern. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats. He caught it on the 6th or 7th cycle and could not stop hearing it after that. It did not sound mechanical. It sounded like something counting. His eyes stayed forward. The thing standing behind the fallen spruce stepped into the full beam. 8 feet. He would estimate this later, measuring the spruce trunk in his headlights against the figure standing behind it, working the math the way he worked every field measurement, methodically, without rushing it. 8 feet, give or take. He would land on that number and stay there. The height registered second. The proportions registered first. Too narrow. That was the word his brain produced before it had any other words. A silhouette built by something that had only heard humans described. The right general architecture, upright, bilateral, standing on 2 legs, but no width to it. No shoulders in any proportion he recognized. Like something designed specifically to disappear behind a single trunk, built for that purpose from the inside out. It stood directly behind the fallen spruce and did not move. The gray was wrong in a specific way. Not silver, not brown gray. The pale gray of dead bark and winter lichen, the color of the inside of a rotted log. Something that had spent most of its existence in the dark between trees and had taken that color on so completely that standing in full headlight beam, it still looked like it was hiding. The head was elongated, turned toward the cab at a lateral angle that required more rotation than any neck should allow, past the point where a human neck stops, past where most animal necks stop. The face caught the headlights wrong. Every nocturnal animal in these mountains throws eyeshine. Deer, bear, fisher cat, every one of them, because eyeshine is not optional, it is anatomy. What he saw were two dark recesses where eyes should have been. A long flat plane below them that his brain kept trying to file under a category and kept failing. It did not move. It stood in the full beam with the quality of something that had chosen to be there, not frozen by light the way a deer freezes, not threatened. It stood the way a person stands in a doorway when they are waiting for you to notice them, and they have been patient about it for a long time. His right hand had found the cracked electrical tape on his thermos lid without him deciding to reach for it. His body had made that decision, reaching for the most familiar object in the cab, the one his hands knew by feel in the dark. The smell had stopped being a smell and started being a temperature, cold and saturated, pressing against every surface in the cab at once. His breath was visible in front of his face. The heater was still running. It didn't matter. The jacket on the back seat moved. A slow shift. Fabric sliding against vinyl, the sound of something adjusting its position. No draft. No explanation that closed the distance between what he heard and what should have been possible in a locked truck on a still night. Eldon did not turn around. This was not a decision. It was something his body had already resolved, the way a person in deep water stops thrashing, not because they gave up, but because they finally understood what stillness costs and what movement costs. He kept his eyes on the road, both hands on the wheel, breathing as even as he could make it. Every Coast County account of the Wood Devil agrees on the hiding, the freeze, the disappearing the moment a direct look lands on it, every single one. This one had stepped into his headlights, his father's rule arriving at its end. An animal that lets you see it has already decided something about you. 3 positions. The figure was in front of the truck. The window fog had been on the left side of the cab. The jacket was behind him. He had been watching the road this entire time, and the thing in his headlights had been standing there for minutes, not moving, not breathing, not one visible exhale at this temperature, when Eldon's own breath was fogging the windshield, and the place his father's sentence finished was somewhere he did not follow it. He killed the radio. The 3-beat static cut out. The silence that replaced it was heavier. The specific quality of something that had been waiting for him to do exactly that. The figure had not moved, had not blinked. It stood in the full beam and waited, and Eldon waited with it, and the white mountain forest held the same patient stillness it had held since he turned the radio down, back when he still thought he recognized it. He sat in that truck for 2 hours and 40 minutes. What the patrol unit found when they arrived was the part of the story that could be written down. The patrol unit spotted Eldon's lights at 11:32 p.m. 2 officers. They found the fallen spruce, photographed it, called in a forestry crew for morning removal. They swept both shoulders with flashlights. Soft, damp September soil. The kind that holds a boot print clearly from 30 feet. A man crossing that shoulder would leave something. A bear would leave something. An 8-foot figure standing in a road for 5 minutes would leave something. They found nothing. The incident log reads, "Downed tree obstructing FR 119 access road. Ranger crews held position pending assist. Tree removed 700 following day. No injuries. No further action required." It does not log the tree with no root ball and no crown debris. It does not log the tracks that weren't there. Eldon drove to Lancaster. He sat with Vera and Kate for 3 hours and drank bad vending machine coffee and was completely, professionally fine. He gave the patrol officers a calm account. Downed tree, dead radio, long wait. And none of it was a lie. And none of it was the whole story. He cried 6 days later in a parking lot in Berlin because a hardware store was out of the specific brand of electrical tape he used on his thermos lid. He stood in the aisle unable to explain to himself why that mattered as much as it did. Then he drove to the next town, found a roll, sealed the crack, and put the thermos back in the truck. He kept the jacket. Didn't wash it, not that week, not that month. He told himself it was because he wanted to remember the smell precisely enough to identify it again. That was a ranger's logic, and it wasn't entirely untrue. But the other reason was simpler. If he washed it, it became just a jacket. He needed it to be evidence of something, even if he could never say what. He requested reassignment to the Nantahala district in western North Carolina in March 2016. His supervisor of 19 years, a man who had worked alongside Eldon through 3 ice storms, 2 missing hiker searches, and a bear mauling, accepted the transfer without asking a single question. That detail has always stayed with me more than it probably should. Kate asked him eventually why he missed the first 3 hours. He said the road was blocked. She asked why he didn't just back out. 11 miles is nothing, she said. He told her road conditions made it unsafe. She believed him, because Eldon Cruse does not lie about road conditions. She was right. He didn't lie. He just never told her what the road condition was. What the incident log doesn't record is what Eldon's father told him about animals that choose to be seen. Or the second half of that rule, the part his father only said once, quietly, near the end of his trapping years, when Eldon asked if he'd ever seen anything out there he couldn't name. His father said once, and it saw me first. That's the part that stayed with me. The Wood Devil has been in these mountains for over 100 years. Every account agrees on the hiding. What none of them answer, what Eldon Cruse has turned over for the better part of a decade, is the question his father's rule leaves open. If an animal that lets you see it has already decided something about you, what did it decide? In these mountains, the things that hide from you are not the things that worry me.